As you may know, our programs are recorded on Zoom. So for those of you viewing at home, if you could please mute your computer or device, and please turn off your camera. You may use. Oh. All right. Sorry. Yes, keep your hand away from the computer. So please turn off your camera, and during the question and answer period, you can use the chat box for that function. And please let us know if you can't hear at the back of the room. We can turn the volume up a bit before we get too much reverberation. And later in the day or tomorrow, probably at the latest, the program will be available on the library's YouTube channel. Next month, November 17th, for our next program, we will feature Susan Muncy. She will be speaking about Generate Hope, an organization to help survivors of the sex trafficking trade. But today, we are very honored to have retired Rear Admiral Terry Kraft, now the CEO of the USS Midway. Our own Coronado board member, retired Rear Admiral Tom Mercer, will provide the introduction. Tom? Don't touch the computer.
Admiral Terry Kraft is no stranger to Coronado, and not to you. I know some of you probably saw the good story about now having the dream job on Midway that was in the Coronado Journal of this issue. In case Terry is a graduate of the Naval Academy, class of '91, and the Kennedy School of Government, a 2-year program in the executive management program, and a master's from Auburn University, and of course, nuclear power school for the full 18 months, including naval reactors, all that type of stuff, before he was XO of Enterprise, and then command of USS Ronald Reagan for 3 years here in San Diego, home port of North Island, before it moved on out as the home port ship out in Japan. His squadron tours, he's a EA6, A6, an F-18, NFO, and actually steamed both Midway and squadron tours on Coral Sea. So 2 out of 3 of the ships of the Midway class. He had all the standard great commands coming up the line at command of the VAQ squadron. Then XO of Enterprise, as I said, command of Shreveport, LPD, command of Ronald Reagan, and the command of the, I guess, Enterprise battle group, but served with several people here in attendance. He retired after 34 years of service and had a second career of 8 years at the General Atomic, working in the UAV program. So he's ready to answer questions and talk about that a little bit. Waiting for the dream job on the USS Midway, where he took over as president and CEO last March. Admiral Terry Kraft.
So I'll use the mic here. I think that'll help with Teams. But before I start, I just want to say there's a lot of pressure on me today. I've got 2 former bosses, Admiral LaFleur, Admiral Martolio. Thank you for being in the front row to keep me on track today. So I'll try to tell the truth in everything I do. It's great to be here today. I love to talk about the USS Midway. It is my dream job. It's my happy place. And I always make the comparison. A lot of the former military types here worked in the Pentagon. And to this day, whenever I get near the Pentagon when I'm in DC, I still feel my heart start to beat a little faster. I think about all the high-ranking people I had to brief, and I get a little stressed. Whenever I get near my old ship, the Midway, I just start to feel happy. And the closer I get, the happier I get. My wife complains it's the other woman. When I first took over, we were walking aboard Midway, and she goes, "I can't believe we're going to another reception in the hangar bay of a ship." I'm like, "Get used to it." So anyway, that's life on Midway. I love this picture. This was actually taken in May of this year by a local professional photographer who gave us this picture. That's the joy of being a nonprofit, and I love it. We in the Navy, we call those up and over lights. Those were actually donated by the fish market many years ago after they realized how much their business improved once Midway showed up. So I think it's a beautiful shot. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself to start because it's my favorite topic, and then we'll talk about Midway. So my career background, Tom pretty much covered all of it. 34-year Navy career. My two cruises on Midway though were life changing. Those were when the Navy, we call that our department head tour. I was lieutenant commander, but the second deployment was Operation Desert Storm. So my wife, Mary, we got married in May of '89, and she was a Navy nurse at the time. And a week later, we both had orders to Japan. So she worked at the way I talked her into coming to Japan is, hey, and once you're in Japan, because you don't have to do the transit back and forth from the United States, the deployments are only 4 months long. So that's really good. And she learned I was a liar because Desert Storm was 7 months we were gone. She learned an early lesson there. But we were very happy in Japan, and the ship and the Midway Air Wing 5 did very well in Desert Storm. We didn't lose anybody, and I was flying with the skipper every night. And his name was Commander Terry Toms, hero of mine. He passed away about 10 years ago of cancer, but a great guy, and I always like to talk about him. And I kind of came full circle when I came aboard the Midway. So the picture in the lower right, that's a picture of me and my dad. He would have loved this. He passed away a couple years ago. He's at Miramar National Cemetery now, but he'd be hanging around at Midway all the time if he was still around. I guarantee you that. When I bring him, I'd invite him out to the Reagan or on Tiger Cruise. He was always on the bridge giving me a lot of advice, right? He'd be like, "Hey, do you see that buoy over there, Terry?" You know, I'm like, "Yeah, I got it. I got it, Dad." He went to Merchant Marine Academy a long time ago. So I want to talk about my Coronado connections. So 5th and 6th grade, we lived across from the old Crown Elementary, if you remember that. Now it's another alumni here. I remember my 6th grade teacher was a guy named Mr. Seitz, who was the mayor of Imperial Beach at the time, as well as being our teacher. And he taught us a lot about civics and about going to city hall meetings. And I do remember that. Our big fight back then was to get grass on the playground. I remember it was a paved playground at Crown Elementary. So he had us going to City Hall, which I thought was pretty effective, to have a bunch of 6th graders there pleading for grass with the city. I don't think we ever got it.
This dock down there, they put no padding.
It's padded now, so they totally skipped the grass thing. Yeah, but it was a great place to be a kid, as everybody knows here. My dad was stationed on the Bonhomme Richard. If you remember, that ship was here in North Island. And we have great historians on Midway. They have if you ever want to look up a relative that served in the Navy, please come to Midway. They love to do this stuff, right? They found my dad's cruise book. So he was the OPSO. So that's a picture of him from 1970 on that deployment on Bonhomme Richard. And I remember standing there in North Island watching the ship come back. They're all the officers are there from the island waving, and I had no idea which one was my dad. They all looked exactly alike. And then I realized when my dad smiled, his ears stuck out. So then I learned how to pick him out. So that was being a kid in Coronado, which was just fantastic. So that was 1970. In 2004, we got to come back for what was actually my first tour in San Diego, was coming to North Island to take over USS Ronald Reagan. So I found we found a picture of Reagan here, Pierside and North Island. And now my kids were middle schoolers. And I told them, this is the best place you'll ever live. Of course, my daughter, the middle schooler, you remember Navy moves, crying all the way across country. It's the end of the world, you know. And then we get to North Island, and all the neighborhood kids just kind of show up at our base house, and I don't see her for like another week. And my kids love Coronado. They love California. They loved it so much that they both came back here to go to college. So my daughter went to USD. Our son went up to Cal Poly. So you never take the California out of the kids once they got out here, and that was absolutely true. Other things, the picture, I've got a picture later of the Midway coming over. The Midway was actually decommissioned. You may remember 1992 here in North Island. And then after about a week of refurb, or, continual improvements, they towed it over to its current spot right now. So maybe some of you got to ride the ship over. I think they said like only 40 people can come, and like 400 showed up or something. And they all got on. And they said, don't go anywhere but the flight deck. And everybody said, yeah, forget you. And they went all over the ship. That's how Midway came over, because I've talked to a lot of people who came over that day. We have from what we can tell, we have over 60 of our 800 volunteers are from Coronado. Are there any Midway volunteers here today? Thought I recognized a few. Yep. Glad to have you. I'll talk about the importance of volunteers on Midway, but I see them coming across on the ferry every day. Always looking for more volunteers. Everybody's welcome. You don't have to be a veteran to work on Midway. You just have to like aircraft carriers. That's it. So these are some of the before and afters. This was what it looked like in '92. So when they decommissioned the ship, they took it up to Bremerton, Washington, and that's where it sat until 2004. Bunch of crazy people decided to get together and do an aircraft museum in San Diego. They faced the usual obstructions in doing anything in California. The city, some people in the city said, well, you're going to be an eyesore. We're going to have to tow you away. After a couple of years, nobody's going to come. To this day, we have to maintain a $300,000 bond in case nobody ever comes, and we have to pay the city to tow the ship away. I can tell you it's not going to happen. They figured we get about 350,000 the first year. We average over 1 million visitors a year on Midway. Next year's our 20th anniversary. We will welcome our 20 millionth visitor on Midway next year, which is pretty cool. We are the #1 TripAdvisor attraction in San Diego. We're the #1 ship museum in the world. What some people don't know is we're actually one of the few large ship museums that's floating. A lot of the ship museums. So we're in this group called Historic Naval Ships Association, which is all once a year. We all get together, all the ship curators, if you will, and our staffs. We all get together somewhere. This year was in Albany. We spend a whole day just talking about corrosion. It's really exciting. But these old ships, right? Midway's a 78-year-old ship. These battleships are older, and maintaining the hull, doing the preservation. The best analogy I heard from my job was from Micah, who runs the Museum of Us in Balboa. He said, I run a museum, you play 3-dimensional chess, right? And that's what it is, preserving this ship, doing the things that need to be done. I found out shortly after I took over that, the mast, oh, I just did something really bad. There it is. The mast, this part right here, thank you. This part right here has not been touched since 1992. Now we have 3 rotating radars, 2 on the front, 2 on the forward mast, and 1 on the aft mast, that are pretty much on their original oil from 92. So that's not good, right? On my good old LPD 12, something fell off the mast one time on my amp bib, and I certainly don't want that to happen now. So this is going to be our next project. Within the next couple of weeks, you're going to see scaffolding going up on the mast, and we're going to do all the refurbishment we need to do. The other reason why we're refurbishing the mast is we finally got our hands on what's a Spin 43 radar, which is the aircraft carrier final approach radar. We've been trying to get one for years. And the Navy is finally upgrading to the Spin 50 radar. So these older Spin 43s are becoming available. And we have a pedestal that we can put it on. So I made the mistake of talking to DC, NAVC, hey, we're still trying to get this. Got it. I'm handing you off to Bobby. I'm handing you off to Jimmy. Well, Jimmy's gone for the month. And so I went to the good people at Surf Pack right here in San Diego. And we started working with their staff. If you know Yvette Roberts over there, great leader. And I just started asking the questions. And then one day we got a call. Hey, can you get over to the USS Macon Island today? And we're like, we can get over there today. Can you take custody of this Spin 43 radar we just removed? We can do that, right? So I don't know if you know, we have a hangar here on North Island on the base, hangar 805, which was actually, the base was nice enough to give it to us before the ship ever came here in the early 2000s. So there's a Spin 43 radar over in 805 right now, waiting to go on Midway. There's a lay, somebody hung a lay on it, which I thought was pretty nice. So that's where we do our refurbishments, right? So we'll barge these planes, our aircraft, back and forth from North Island over to Midway. So what a great facility there. So we are a treasure for San Diego, a national icon. What a lot of people don't know is we do over 800 events in addition to being a museum. So we're open from 10 to 5 every day of the year except for 2, which is great. But in the morning, we're usually doing military ceremonies. So a lot of active duty want to come on board and do promotions, reenlistments, sometimes changes of command. We've done a ship commissioning on Midway, all kinds of things. Gary Sinise was on board yesterday for an event. So I love, and we've never changed the price. So I love the active duty events, and we don't close the ship. So we'll rope it off, but there'll be guests walking around, and they'll get to hear somebody talking about what their 30-year career in the Navy meant to them. And I walk around a lot. I'm a sidler. I'll just kind of sidle up to people and listen. And people will say, I'll hear people saying, can you believe that ceremony? God, they look so good in their uniforms. I love it because it's really our authenticity, right? It makes us an authentic attraction in a Navy town. And even before the ceremonies, we have active duty volunteers because Midway's an easy place to come and get your volunteer points that they do. So we've always got, especially in the morning, we've got sailors running all over the ship, and I love that. But then in the evenings, we open up for corporate events, and we are a location of choice. So about 20% of our total revenue comes from these corporate events at night. People love to do events on the flight deck of the Midway, and probably most people have been on it at night. It's beautiful. The winds always seem to calm down, and it's just a nice place to be. We've done boxing tournaments, basketball games. We do high school proms, all the standard corporate events. There's an insurance company, and they go all out on Midway. They rent out the whole ship, the hangar bay, the flight deck. They had 2 bands in the hangar bay, and then on the flight deck, they had the lead singers from Kansas, Journey, 2 other rock bands, playing for them up there. Paratroopers came in, landed the flag, and what else? Oh, and they had fireworks off the bow too. I don't think I want to buy insurance from them, but I definitely liked going around and looking at their party. It was first rate. We draw the line sometimes. We had somebody wanted to do an engagement party. They wanted to bring aboard an elephant. We said no. But when we do these events, we actually have to load everything on board. So we have a forklift. We load it on to an aircraft elevator, and then the aircraft elevator takes it up to the flight deck. If you haven't been aboard Midway since COVID, we did 2 major things. So our chief engineer, many of you may know him, Len Santiago, great guy. He was with me on Reagan. He was on the flag staff. He's our chief engineer. He was in heaven during COVID because it turned into a shipyard period, which they love that stuff. So we totally, we built out the aft, back in the aft portion, which we call the jet shop. We built the Cafe 41. So we have a real restaurant back there now. Mac McLaughlin, my predecessor, hated we had a little snack bar back in the Fantail, hated that snack bar. He hated the vendors. So when their contract ran out, we found a great new vendor. We built them a state-of-the-art kitchen. I love that. That was $7 million that we spent. You remember that was a time when nobody really knew if museums are going to be open again, right? We didn't know what was going to come out of COVID. We were hoping. The other thing they did is we have 3 large aircraft elevators on the ship, and which were running on their original cables and machinery down below, and it wasn't good. We totally refurbished all 3 of those aircraft elevators, again, for about $7 million. We use a lot of people that here in NASCO Shipyard, a lot of people that I knew from when I was here on Reagan. 2 of the leaders there, John Bentley, Tony Gonzalez, are now working on Midway, and they help us. We totally redid all 3 aircraft elevators, fully functional, recabled, new machinery rooms, and we use them all the time. We're always running them up and down. We have people elevators to move people around, but we use the big elevators too to move stuff, and that's pretty cool. So this is kind of this is part of my vision and what I want to deliver to Midway and grow, is the fact that we are a community asset, right? We do, I talked about the military events, but we want to be part of the San Diego community, right? And, the biggest way we do it is through our educational foundation. We have over 50,000 kids a year come on board Midway for education. We have fully certified teachers. I have a great PhD that runs our education department, Tina Chin. We service every single school in San Diego, in the San Diego School District. If they can't afford a bus, we get them a bus. We bring them on board. We focus on STEM in our classrooms. If you're ever on board Midway, ask for a walk through the education area. If there's no kids down there, we can show you. It's amazing the way we built that out with the help of some partners. We do STEM, but then at some point we start walking them around the ship, and we show them, the idea of teamwork. We take them to the mess decks. Kids, a lot of younger kids, the part they like the best on the Midway is actually going below decks. We call it the city at sea, right? Because they know what a kitchen looks like, and now they're seeing a really big kitchen, or they know what laundry they know what the laundry room looks like at their house, and now they're looking at one on an aircraft carrier. Same with the chapel and everything else. So we take them into the galley and we say, hey, these sailors work down here. They made 14,000 meals a day. You don't see them on Top Gun, right? But you do, you understand how service to your shipmates and those kind of things. So we try to fill in some of the blanks with some of that other stuff when we get them on board and get to walk them around. We're now into our 2nd generation of teachers. So we have a teacher now who came on board Midway as a little girl, and now she's a teacher on the ship. So I love that. Other things we do, the USS Midway Foundation. So you can see we'll be over 4 million this year with our Pillars of Freedom grants. We sponsor a lot of scholarships. San Diego High School is one where I got to give out scholarships there. And we do grants to mostly, to all veteran-oriented organizations, typically in the amount of about $8,000 to $10,000 per grant. So we're getting ready to announce that for this year. So that's the foundation. But other ways we bring the community aboard is our membership program, which of course I'm the new guy, so I'm changing that. We're gonna kind of upgrade our membership program. Our 2 most popular events, anybody know what they are as far as having people come aboard the ship? No. 4th of July, that's one. So 2,300 people on the flight deck. It's sold out online in 2 hours, right? So what we're doing now with our members, we're telling, we're saying, okay, we're going to give you access a day prior for 24 hours prior, so you can get in on it, right? Because it sells out right away. The other one is Top Gun night. So we've been doing this for like the last 5 years. This year is the first year we showed Top Gun Maverick, right? And I don't know if you've ever seen these blow up screens, huge screens. So we had them back to back, great audio visual system. You can bring your lawn chairs and we had beverages, service and food and everything else. That sold out in 2 hours. That was 2,300 people up on the flight deck. Big night. Again, these are ways we connect with the community, right? And I'm going to show you a couple more big community connections here coming up in the end. So I get asked a lot, what makes Midway so successful? Why are you so much more successful than the other carrier museums? And my answer is volunteers, right? So we have over 800 volunteers on Midway. We have over 450 of them are qualified as docents. So the docents wear the yellow hats, and we have a lot of safety folks because it's carrier. You can trip, you can hit your head, right? Martolio knows that. I couldn't resist. And so we need safety people to keep people safe. So my predecessor, Mac McLaughlin, this funny story, he was getting ready to open the museum. So he had the OSHA guy from SeaWorld come over like a week before and say, hey, will you do a walkthrough and look and see if we have any hazards here on the ship? The guy walked through, he said, I wouldn't open this place. And Mac's like, we're opening, I'm sorry. So we need volunteers. We need these people to be in different places on the ship to help. And if you read our TripAdvisor reviews, if you read Yelp or anything else, what people mostly remember about Midway is, hey, I met this person, I met this veteran, well, you can't swing a dead cat around, or, in Coronado without hitting a retired admiral. But on a lot of people come on board Midway, they've never met a veteran before, right? Admiral Martolio and others help out on our behind the scenes tour, right? Where we bring members on board and they get to hear what it was like to be a strike group commander, what it was like to be a carrier CO. And we take them in all these places on the ship that aren't open to the public. They love hearing these stories, right? Some of them are even true. But volunteers make my day. They inspire me. If you're ever having a bad day, just walk around and talk to a volunteer. It's going to change your outlook on life, and they inspire me, as I said, every day. They, like, you'll talk to them and they'll say, yeah, I was in the hospital last week. I had a stent put in, but I had to get back on Midway. So now I'm back. And sometimes I say, follow your doctor's orders, we'll be okay. Nope, I had to get back on Midway. And that's just unbelievable. Great, just great people. How about new stuff on Midway? So again, the new guys always got to do new stuff. This is something we've been talking about for a couple years, and we're going to roll it out this year. And our timing, I don't think could not be better. Has anybody ever visited the Wisconsin Museum in Norfolk? Old battleship, yeah. They do. It's beautiful. But they started about 8 years ago doing lighting up their ship at night. And every year they add more lights. And it's really their most popular time of the year on Wisconsin is when they light up their ship. So we've been talking about jingle jets on Midway for a long time. And this year we're going to do it. So between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we're lighting up. We've hired a company. We're lighting up all the planes on the flight deck. We've got lights all over. We've got Christmas stuff in the hangar bay. And we even have some stuff below deck. So this is aimed at getting families out on the Embarcadero, looking, doing holiday stuff. The reason I think our timing is good is the Petco light show is not happening this year because they're going to use that time to work on Gallagher Park. So we're the only game in town. When I look at the Embarcadero area, which is growing and changing rapidly, I want to introduce a family event down there at the holiday season. So that's Jingle Jets. And it's going to be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I think Sunday nights between, and you can look at our website, midway.org. And that's between Thanksgiving and Christmas. The busiest week of the year, summer's our busiest time overall. The busiest week of the year on Midway though? Busiest 1 week period? Exactly, that's right, Tim. Between Christmas and New Year's, because I think it's like the presents are opened. What are we going to go do? Hey, let's go down to Midway. And it's a really busy time. So this is going to be fun for us to do. Opening up new exhibits. So we used to, in the early days of Midway, they opened up a new section of the ship every year, right? Well, now we've opened up a lot of cool stuff, but I wanted to get back to that. So we haven't opened up a new area on Midway in probably 5 years, a new major exhibit. So we are going to be opening up a new major exhibit early next year. And what we've done is a lot of people ask about what was it like to be an engineer on Midway, and so we're opening up this engineering berthing, showing them first off, sailors lived where they worked, right? So the engineering berthing is right above the main engine room. And of course, there's a machinery shop right in the middle of their berthing, because of course there is. And so we're going to show them what that was like. And then we're going to take them through a carrier fire simulation, right? We call it fire, fire, fire. And we're going to show them, I wanted to bring in, hey, there is a big element of danger on any Navy ship, but particularly on an aircraft carrier. Hot steam, fuel, moisture, all those things are flowing throughout the ship constantly, right? And so we're going to take them into a scenario where they're going to kind of get to experience a fire. Museums now, it's all about interactive things. So Midway has a lot of great places to visit on the ship to show you, hey, this is what it was like, or, tributes to aviators, of course, and ship's company, et cetera. But we want them to experience, here's what it like to be in a fire in a very small space, right? And then we're going to show them how all sailors are trained as firefighters. Even air wing guys are trained to fight fires, and how if they don't save their ship, they're going to lose their ship. So we're bringing that in. We've gotten really good feedback from our consultants on how this is going to be set up, and we've hired a great company to open up that engineering exhibit early next year. The next exhibit after that, like I said, I have a lot of ideas. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. There's a section of the ship called the Carrier Intel Center, CVIC. And, the first thing I remember when I came back on Midway is, I lived in the Intel Center during Desert Storm. I was a bombardier navigator, so I was learning the threats, studying my target, getting our assignments, planning the strikes. You're down there all the time. Only maybe 1% of the crew is even allowed in those spaces because they're top secret. We're going to open up Civic, and there's a couple themes. One theme is it's going to be a salute to the afloat intelligence community, right? Like, we have all kinds of great red rooms you can look at. You can understand what it was like to be in the bridge of a carrier. We don't talk a lot about the intel folks. And a lot of us owe our success and maybe even our survival, right, to the intel guys and gals. So it's going to be a tribute to them, but we're also going to take people through mission planning. What do threats look like? It's going to be a Desert Storm scenario. That's the era that we're going to pick, but then we're going to show them how intelligence has changed and evolved since then. So that's going to be our next big thing that'll happen over the next 2 years. I'm really excited about it, as you can tell. And then there's the big one. And by the way, you're the first public group to see the new 20th anniversary logo of the Midway. You're going to see it everywhere next year. Yeah, thank you. It's also the 20th anniversary of Petco. So we're talking to the Padres. A lot of cross-promotion opportunities here. We are now sponsoring the San Diego Veterans Day Parade. So this hasn't happened in 3 years. And Mac, my predecessor, looked at this and said, that's not right. We got to bring the parade back to downtown San Diego. So we're sponsoring it this year. Our marketing department has done a great job. But what's interesting about 2023 is, look at all these anniversaries, right? This is amazing. 50th anniversary end of Vietnam, 50th anniversary since POWs came back. If you look in our parking lot, you'll see banners with some of the early pioneers of females in naval aviation, Korean War, et cetera. 100th anniversary, they got a spelling error in there. 100th anniversary of MCRD, which we celebrated this year. So we're going to have representatives who represent all these things who are going to be participants in the parade. We were hoping for about 60 participants. We're over 90 participants in this parade. It's on November 12th. It's the day after, because the city has 2 cruise ships and a convention going on the day before. So they gave us the day after. It's going to come down Harbor Boulevard. We're bringing this back, and I'm very excited about it, to bring the Veterans Day Parade back to San Diego. We're transforming the pier. So you see the picture above. People like the parking. There's over 400 parking spaces there. But when the Midway first came to San Diego, one of the agreements that the group made was we were going to turn this pier into a park. Well, as with many things, it's taken 19 years to get everything lined up with the city, with the Port of San Diego, with the all-important Coastal Commission, who many of you are familiar with. Happy to say that in February, we got unanimous approval from Coastal, which never happens, to build this park and for the design of this park. So that was no easy feat that MAC was able to do. And this is going to be the largest veterans park on the West Coast. It's actually going to, wrap around from the KISS statue all the way in the Embarcadero, all the way around to our pier. And the purpose of this park is a salute to veterans, to bring in the ideas of service and sacrifice and those kind of things. All the things that our docents talk about every day, turn it into a park, to an interactive experience that everybody can come to. It's a community asset. It's a public works project. We have a capital campaign committee. We have to raise about $35 million for this park. We just had a new estimate, so maybe that number is going up, which it always does. But we are working with a lot of companies to sponsor this park, naming opportunities. I'll set up a collection jar on the way out. It's a major project. We have 5 years to do it. So from February of this year, we have to complete it in 5 years. We break ground in February. The first thing that's coming down, because I hate this building. The city's had 19 years to tear it down. They haven't done it. So we're paying for it. The museum is paying $15 million to do the initial tear down this thing. We got to move some electrical, and that's phase one of Freedom Park. That's going to happen. I said February. Now it's going to be in March of next year. I want to swing the first hammer. So does the mayor. We have good support from Scott Peters, who was a former port commissioner. Some federal money has come in for this, $2 million. We're hoping to get more. But this is our fundraising effort to build this park. And now is the tricky part. We've got a video. I think it might be starting. You have a question about parking, I will answer your question. This is Footsteps of Freedom along the right. And there's interactive rails there as you go down, which tell different stories. We're not a ferry. This is a salute to families at this end of the pier. That's the family statue. So that's John William Fenn, first Medal of Honor winner, World War II, Pearl Harbor survivor, San Diego resident, enlisted man. I heard one question already, and this is a question I always get. So when I took over the ship, I said, I like to keep things simple. So it's 3 Ps: preservation, programs, and people, all the things I talked about today. But then a 4th P really came out from the volunteers, and that's parking, right? So when I first got to Midway, I solved an initial parking problem working with the port. That was a small victory. But people ask, well, you're losing. There's still going to be 100 parking spaces on the pier. We'll still have 41 spaces for our volunteers, but that's down from 100. Where's the rest of the parking? So if you've been down there, I don't know if you've noticed the IQHQ construction right across the street. They are building a lot of it is, they want it to be biotech, right? And underneath those 3 buildings, there's 3 city blocks of underground parking, 2,200 spaces. So I've already leased 300 of them for the staff, because right now we park over in the Intercontinental Hotel. I've got 300 spaces for the staff and 100 for our volunteers in there. That's where our guests are going to park. They're also building a 250 slot surface lot where they thought they might build, Manchester thought they might build a new hotel, but they backed off on that. So they're going to put a surface lot there as well. So, about 2,500 new parking spots across the street from Midway should handle the parking that we're losing on the pier. We're losing about 300 spaces on the pier. But yeah, so I learned you better pay attention to parking, right? Any questions?
We'll take the
Or
5-minute break if we can. That was
Sure.
terrific.
thank you.
Before everybody jumps And some of them are, I mean.
I'll start the Q&A when everybody is seated, please. Thank you. Our first question for Admiral Kraft is right here.
Okay,
It's on. Just put
Is
it
it?
close to your mouth.
okay. Thank you very much for being here. It's really interesting. I just got chills all over my body.
Good.
And I want to ask you, the parking places where people park,
Uh-huh.
can they get ticketed if they stay too long?
Do you mean if they don't pay?
Right, no, it's paid. Parking?
Yeah, Ace, we don't own the pier.
Oh.
So Ace owns the pier. So Ace Parking runs the pier. But I will say, I thought I'd never see this. They just lowered their prices.
Wow.
Has anybody ever seen that happen?
Wow.
No. So now it's $15 for the day, which in San Diego, downtown San Diego is not
Yeah,
bad,
that's-
sad to say.
Next question, Jerry.
Yeah, hey,
Sir.
it's a great presentation,
Thank you.
and thank you. My question is about the hull. What kind of maintenance do you need to maintain on that? And are you eating away all 9 inches of steel or whatever?
Right. So, in the HENSA conference I went to, we talk about ship preservation. That's the #1 topic, right? If you well, first off, you have a ship sitting in salt water, which is terrible. But also, if you have water, in a space somewhere, a lot of hulls actually are corroding from the inside out because they allow standing water down there. Our founders did a good job in protecting the hull. We've decided, well, first off, there's no place that we can dry dock the Midway on the West Coast, right? There's no carrier capable places except for Bremerton, and guess what? They're booked up with active duty carriers. They're not going to take the Midway. And we also feel like if we ever pulled out of our pier, the city of San Diego would find a reason for us not to come back. So we've decided, it was decided long ago, that we're going to maintain our hull pier side, and we're never going to let that happen. So we do a full hull cleaning each year. We have cathodes, and if you see things, people ask, where are those things hanging down in the water next to Midway? That's cathodic protection, both inside and out for the hull. We do thickness checks, which is kind of like a sonar where you do hull thickness checks in different areas. We identify areas of weakness. Right now, I'm laser focused on the forward pump room down on the 6th deck, which is what we're going to go after. So we don't allow, we have water, fresh water now, a lot of our ballast tanks just to keep the ship level. But other than that, we don't allow water. We don't allow moisture. We're about to add, in 25, we're going to add some dehumidification in a lot of spaces as well, because if you take away the moisture, that inhibits the corrosion as well. So we pay a lot of attention to our hull because we're floating. As I said, a lot of ships have settled to the ground. Here's an insider story for you. The docents know this, but a couple of years ago, we found out because of a buildup of sediment and the way these tides are getting more extreme, that we were grounding by the stern. So our rudders and our 2 lowest of our 4 props were actually grounding in the rocks and the silt along the pier there.
Wow.
And what it was doing was creating stress on the hull, the wrong kind of stress. And we were seeing cracks back aft in the hull. So we went to the Navy and they looked at it. They said, pull everything, just take it all off. We're like, we don't want to do that. We don't want to take the running gear off of Midway. We don't like to mess with the ship. Another organization said, you can just remove the bottom 2 to 3 feet of your rudders and your props, and then you'll be truly floating again. So that's what we did. We did it all. They went underwater and they did all that. So we're truly floating again. But now that we're truly floating again, we move, right? You know, of course, we move with the tides, but the ship actually moves forward and aft about 5 to 10 feet throughout the day, right? So you'll hear the bows creaking. That's never a good sign. So we are doing some engineering on the bows to make them more flexible. But I love it that we're truly floating, and we're not damaging the hull by having it sit on a cement slab or something like that.
Next question, Elizabeth.
You did mention that you were going to have a fire exhibit. Will you make any connection with what San Diego saw 5 days of the burning of the Richard Bone home, which was regarded as a catastrophe, disaster that might have been avoided?
Well, we're certainly going to talk about fire, but we're going to focus on shipboard fire, shipboard firefighting. But then we're also going to show the tools and the training that are used to fight that fire. So it's more about shipboard. But I remember when I was here on Reagan, you remember, I think this was, you remember the fires in 06? No, this was like 2006. No, it was like 2006 or 7, something like that. What was it? Yeah. So Charlie and I here were working on Reagan at the time. And first thing they called us and said, hey, we're having trouble with power. Can you provide power back to the city from your ship? And we said, well, first off, you don't want, because when these carriers are pierside, we're either in standby mode or we're running a reactor maybe at 2%. We're, very low. We don't really crank them up till we're well away. So I said, you don't want these reactors to be operating at 100% pierside, and we're not going to do that because that's not in our protocol to do that. And they said, okay, can you use less power? And we said, yeah, we can. Where's the meter? And we don't have a meter for carriers. And I said, well, how can I use less until I have a meter? So they installed a meter, and using that, we were able to mess around with our lineups and everything. And we were able to reduce our pierside power consumption by 20%, almost like that. And then we eked out another 10% or so while we're sitting pierside. So those are the fires. The other thing we did is I cut sailors loose to volunteer and go help out in communities where they needed to fight the fire. And all of our sailors that lived in our barracks on North Island volunteered to move back onto the ship so families and their pets, don't tell the base, could move into our barracks. So that's what we did during the fire. So I thought that was just a great response by our sailors, by the ship, to help out the community in a tough time. Thanks for reminding me of that.
Next question right here.
If there are no visitors on the ship and for some reason or other you had to move the ship, say out to the ocean or something, about how long would it take you to do that?
To move Midway? You mean to move the ship from the pier? So the first step would be Coast Guard certification, right? So the Coast Guard, you remember that rotting submarine that was at the Maritime Museum, that rotting Russian submarine? He decided to scrap it. The head of the Maritime Museum wanted to scrap it, and he had a company in Mexico that would take it. But it took him months for the Coast Guard to allow him to tow that, because they got to make sure that the thing's not going to sink, right? So the first step would be Coast Guard certification. They'd have to come all. Right now, the Coast Guard wants nothing to do with us. I was surprised. I said, okay, show me all the rules and regulations. And the Coast Guard just says, you're different. We don't want, but the Coast Guard would have to certify us to be towed. And then we would have to find a tow company that would be willing to tow us, rig up the tow plan, et cetera. It would probably take 3 to 4 tugs to get us away from the pier. And then, at least probably stick with 3 ocean-going tugs to tow us where we needed to go. Don't want to do that.
Do we have another question? Yes, sir.
I'm Steve, and I enjoyed your talk very much. I'm curious, Midway is getting so popular that we're seeing 4,000, maybe 5,000 people a day. Do you have a maximum number that you're going to have a cutoff, the number of visitors that are allowed on the Midway?
Well, the good news is, it kind of spans throughout the day. Our peak hours are between about 11 and 1. So I will say, if you're coming to visit the Midway, try to arrive around 10 a.m. and go to the island as your first stop, because that's where the traffic hangs up, right? It takes about 20 minutes to go through the island. It's a docent-led tour all the way through, but that's where you tend to wait the most. So get there around 10 a.m. We've had as many as 8,000 people aboard during a museum day. We can handle that because of our volunteers. Our biggest challenge is, okay, make sure we have enough volunteers for that day. We need about 100 volunteers a day to man all the stations that they need to man. But we can handle about 8,000 people a day. The volunteers aren't happy because they feel like the quality of the tour is not as good because it's so crowded. And I just say, they're just tourists. They don't know any better. But during the summer, we average about 6,000 on a weekend day. During the winter, we average about 4,000 on a weekend day.
Tom, do you have a question? Okay.
Terry, the access, of course, is a tough job, and it's terrific. The access you have, of course, with that ladder outside the ship that goes from the hangar deck up to the flight deck, and it's certainly the elevators you have. Are there any plans? The big backlog, as you know, is the bridge tour, the private flight tour, and that type of thing. Any plans to put an elevator to take people up to those two levels?
Yeah, we do not presently have a plan on putting an elevator in the island, just because it would be, we'd have to tear up so much of it to do it. But what we are doing is we're renewing all of our people elevators. So in conjunction, so you can take an elevator, as you know, from the pier up to the hangar bay. There's another one from the hangar bay up to the flight deck. There's another one from the hangar bay down below. But I want to upgrade our entry experience, right? So, I don't know if you knew this, the browse that you walk aboard the ship on were given to us by the Navy 20 years ago, right? So brow 3 and 4, where the guests come on, I want to upgrade that whole thing. So we're going to turn it into kind of an atrium. Like when you come in, you realize, okay, we're someplace special. Maybe there's going to be a plane hanging, model the Midway, observation deck as you kind of go up where you can stop and look at the park. So we're upgrading that whole entry experience, right? People, these are really geeky museum trends, but people are buying less tickets at a ticket office now, and they're just getting them on their phones, right? So people walk up and they do a QR code and they get their tickets and they walk aboard, right? So that allows us to make the ticket booth. We'll still always have the ticket booth there, but we can make it a little smaller, right? Here's another geeky museum fact. You know how you've seen those food kiosks, like now they have them at Costco. So it got me to thinking, our Costco has totally transitioned from there used to be you walk up to the counter and order your little hot dog, right? That if I want to take my wife out for a special lunch, we go to Costco. Hot dog and a soda is still $1.50. So you go up there and you order it in the booth, but I've noticed they've totally transitioned to kiosks. So I was studying a little bit about kiosks. People will buy more food at a kiosk than they will when they go to a counter. Because a kiosk is never bashful about saying, do you want pie with that? Do you want fries with that? Right? And people look around, yeah, I want fries with that. So again, we're always going to have people on Midway, but it's transitioning now to people walking up to a kiosk and just ordering their food and going to get it.
Next question in the back.
I know why you asked that question, though,
Make us proud.
because on Enterprise, there was an elevator that went all the way up to above the bridge to the tower. And
Nimitz, when it was first built, I'm blanking on Nimitz too. And
yeah, people were very surprised. Well, I had this. Yeah.
Long Beach had an elevator too.
Yeah.
It captured
Well, you remember we were on Connie, had escalators. Yeah.
Greetings. Question. As far as numbers are concerned, budgets, things of that nature, costs.
Yeah.
Can you pontificate numbers that would be interesting?
Yes.
Costs, budgets, and all that good stuff.
Sure. So we're one of the few museums that is totally self-sufficient on admissions, right? Most museums, they rely on donors, they rely on grants to keep going. We can suffice on our admissions. And we actually make extra money with that. Some of that you've seen we put towards Freedom Park. Some of that we've put towards some of our scholarship programs. So we make our money off, we make our revenue off 1 million visitors a year.
$20.
$31.
21.
31 to come aboard the ship. Veterans are $10 off. First responders are free. We're going to change that a little bit next year. We're going to have the entire month of November is going to be free for veterans next year. And there's going to be a first responder month, teachers month. We're going to rotate different months that are going to be free, but we'll always have the veterans discount on Midway. And we'll try to keep our costs the same. We just paid our largest power bill we've ever paid, over $100,000. We have a lot of air conditioning on Midway. So costs are going up for air conditioning. For a month. Yeah. So that was in the middle of the summer. Yes, ma'am.
You talked about the fish market. Remember when you're raising money for the Veterans Park? They're your biggest. They love you. They love you.
They do now, Norma, but they didn't always.
Oh, no, I remember when I first got there because they were getting all these, they didn't want them. They didn't want it.
They didn't want it.
And then their accountant went in there and said, look at the revenue. And it had gone up. So Bob Wilson, who owned the fish market at the time, called me. He said, "Norma, it's kind of dark over there by the side of the ship, you know, where the kiss is. How about if I give you $500,000 and we split the cost of the light?"
Mm-hmm.
So remember them when you're going after the money for the.
Oh yeah, I've talked to them.
Good.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I mean, you're the only one there.
But I looked back at the original paperwork, and the fish market, they were sure that their business would be ruined by the Midway. So they said that there's a document. I found a document that says we'll donate $250,000 to the new aircraft carrier museum as long as it's not here. Put it anywhere. Put it in South Bay. Put it by the Coast Guard station. As long as you don't put it on Navy Pier, we'll donate $250,000. And then they realized exactly they're our biggest fan.
And that's such a great organization. The owner, Bob Wilson, when they had their fire, he paid for all of their employees for 6 months until they fixed it.
Yeah, and we took all their events, scheduled events, we took them on Midway. So if there's no more questions, I'll leave you with one humbling story for being the CEO on Midway. So the problem with all these docents is you never know when one has the goods on you, right? So I'm down at the snack bar one day eating my little cheeseburger, and this docent walks up and goes, "This is Wayne, you guys know Wayne." Walks up and goes, "Did you go to the Naval Academy?" I go, "I did, yes, sir." He goes, "What year did you graduate?" I said, 81. He goes, "Did you take a class in weather?" I said, "So this was last semester, senior year. I had my aviation slot, didn't much care about anything." And I said, yeah, I took your class. You gave me a C-." And he's like, "Well, I don't really remember you." I said, you had like a weird curve. I never really understood it. And anyway, so he walked away. So you remember a few weeks later, the big hurricane's bearing down, coming up to San Diego, right? So Wayne tells all the other docents, because we're talking about how we're going to protect the ship, et cetera. He tells other docents, "Hey, well, don't ask Kraft about this hurricane. He doesn't know shit about weather."
Anyway, thank you very much, Edna. I've got a little token of our appreciation. It's a small item, really doesn't measure up to how much we appreciate your talk this morning, but it's a pin So
Thank you.
thank you very much. We really appreciate having you here this morning.
Got a point for you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Admiral. So also we'd like to thank also the staff from the library, Selena Liadulid and Tara Davies. So the program will be on the library's YouTube channel in case you want to repeat it, or for those of you who may have missed it. So stand by for that. And next month, we hope to see you for our November 17th meeting here at the library. So hope to see you then, and thank you all for coming. And take care and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you, Admiral, again.